Welcome to another episode of the Parent Guide to Education podcast. Today, Emily is joined by Juliet, who is an expert in yoga and meditation, and she talks about the benefits that teens can gain from these, particularly as they head towards exams.
Afternoon, everybody, and welcome. This is the fifth in our series of talking through topics to do with Children's Mental Health Week. And today we are talking about meditation and the benefits it can have for teenagers. And we're here with the lovely Juliet. So do you want to introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do, and maybe even why you do it, please.
Yes, well, obviously I'm Juliet and I live in Hove, and I got into, I've always been quite into yoga. I used to work at the BBC in music publicity, and then when we moved down to Brighton, I wanted to do something around my children, and as I'd always liked yoga, I decided to do children's yoga. So I did that for quite a while, and also got into photography at the time and taking pictures of, basically done a lot around my children. But so I carried on with that. And then when the pandemic hit, the beginning of the pandemic, I was getting more and more concerned about teenagers and everything that they were going through. I was also thinking I wasn't really sure if I wanted to carry on with my photography. I mean, I didn't want to drop it completely, but it was harder to do that work for obvious reasons, like social distancing. And anyway, I was talking to this lovely friend of mine who also worked at the BBC, and she now lives in Australia. And she was telling me all about, we'd stayed in touch, but not loads. And we really caught up. And she was telling me all about this meditation practice she teaches. And I was saying, oh, wow, because I had quite a perceived idea about what meditation was like. And it hadn't really appealed to me because I thought I wouldn't be very good at kind of clearing my mind and sitting in lotus. She had such a vitality and joy about her life and everything she was connected to. And it really began to appeal to me, but I hadn't really realized how much till we were having chats. And I was saying I was thinking of doing something new. And she said, well, what do you really want to do? And I said, well, I just really want to do something that's really going to help teenagers before they get to kind of crisis point, because I think this pandemic is going to cause so many problems for them. They're at an age where they should really be finding their tribe and connecting, and social media, is not the best. I mean, it's got its benefits like this, but it's not the best place for them. And when they're isolated, at home, and the only thing they've got is that, then it's coming down to likes and who's been on your post and TikTok, and they don't know, like, if they're feeling a bit low, whereas adults, we know what to do. We know that, okay, I'm feeling really grumpy this morning, maybe I need a brisk walk, or maybe I need to just sort of chill out and play some nice music, or I need to go paddleboarding or call that friend that I have a really lovely connection with. Whereas they can sort of be, maybe both parents at work in the dark on their phones, instead of connecting with someone like that, they'd be like on TikTok on some stranger's, thing, and whatever they do on TikTok, dance or whatever, and what I hoped is that if I can connect them to these things that bring them joy and happiness, these meditative moments, and they can learn more about that and how to be in tune with themselves and have their own compassion for themselves and others, then they'll grow up with these tools that will just really help them as adults for life, if you can get in there early, especially with the pandemic, because there's such a, there is a real rise, isn't there? I think there was a survey done at the beginning of Children's Mental Health Week saying that teachers noticed a 95% increase in children's anxiety, and I think it was 77% in needing sort of specialist help for real big problems in mental health. So they're quite scary statistics, but I would say at the same time we can almost focus a bit too much on that anxiety, and we're all a bit panicked by it and all that. You know, it's quite a buzzword, I think, you know, even amongst teens now, you know, and some of them will, and not, some of them will have severe anxiety. I think there's a kind of scale of not being very anxious and being really anxious, and we all flit about a bit. And yeah, some will get really stuck up the anxious end and need like proper CBT or whatever. But I think for sort of mid to mild anxiety, we need to stop being quite so scared of it and say, actually, it's normal. And sometimes part of it's excitement before an exam, or, you know, or being on stage in the school play or whatever. But I think in order to make them more resilient, then it's absolutely key to connect them to the joy in life and to help them find out who they really are, you know, and that will be what makes them tick. But that will be so bespoke to that, you know, they'll work out their own things, because what works for one doesn't. I mean, for example, yesterday, I've got two, I'm a mum of two teenage girls, so I've got a 14-year-old and a 16-year-old. The younger one, she has really quite bad eczema, which is really flared at the moment. And yesterday was a bit of an awful day, and we drove off in the car because she's having light therapy for it at the hospital, and we were late and it was a nightmare. And, you know, she was understandably really quite cranky on the way home. And, you know, when you think, right, the last thing she wants is her mother's voice, nothing I say is going to work here. But I know for her, something that's really her kind of meditation, where she gets lost in that moment of sort of awe and wonder and feeling connected and letting her background stress disappear, is music. So I just said to her, do you want to put some of your music on? And she went, of course, you know, and took it and put her music on. And then I just sort of pointed at, because we live in Hove, you know, right next to Brighton, I just pointed out the sunset and it on the sea, and she was sort of like, whatever, mum. And then I could just see her really listening to the music and not talking for a while and just watching the light on the waves. And it's that sort of pausing in life and lingering in that moment. And sure enough, 6 minutes in, 2 songs, she was sort of, oh, what are we having for dinner, you know? And it's, for another child, it might be going for, another teenager, it might be going for a run. Another one, you know, my older daughter went through a stage of really liking baking, you know, when she was or watching bits of comedy that lit her up, you know, just yeah, it's just really, and I think when they can feel that on a cellular level and they feel it in their bones, that joy and that happiness and that connecting to things they love, then when harder times come and they're feeling really fed up, they've got that kind of rememberedness in their bones that actually life can be okay. And I know how to make me feel better. And also in my classes, sorry, I'm speaking a lot. I also do themes, sort of nourishing well-being themes for teens. So we'll do, so I'll start and I'll introduce like a topic, which might be creativity, and how, you know, a lot of you will think you're not creative, but actually, you know, you are. And now you're going to draw a little picture, and you're not allowed to take your pen off the paper, and they have these little journals. So I'll do a little exercise like that. And, you know, talk about how you could be creative in all sorts of different ways. And then we would do, so there'd be like, yeah, so themes would be creativity, things like self-befriending, how to deal with worry, friendships, things that, you know, things that make you, well, like there's a sort of heart class for things you love, you know, they're all just themes that will make them think about, have a bit more self-inquiry. Because I think when you're a teenager, you're, especially nowadays, you know, you're constantly throwing images on social media of how you should be and what you should be doing and who's out here, and, you know, half your peers are at the best day ever, you know, and you're like, you can't, whereas you used to come home and switch off from all that. And I think if they can actually, you know, if they start to invest in themselves, they're not investing in that stuff that won't last and keep them. And they'll just be stronger, better, brighter, happier adults. And in that way, through being kind to themselves, and I know self-care has got a bit of a reputation of like a bubble bath and a face mask, but proper self-care, you know, if you are looking out for yourself and thinking, I'm a bit cranky, I'm going to stomp off and put my angry music on my headphones and regulate my nervous system and flush out that background stress, you're going to be nicer to be around, aren't you? And I think if you have compassion for yourself, you're going to have more compassion for others, because you'll be thinking about what works for you, and you know, it helps you have more empathy for other people.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, interestingly, you've talked about lots and lots of different ways that people can basically be meditating.
Yeah.
At no point have you suggested that people sit cross-legged and go, which is what everybody pictures, I think, when you talk about meditation. I know I did when it was first suggested. So
yes,
through depression, and it was all, you know, go for a walk and eat good food. And I was like,
yeah,
you have the energy for a walk. And meditation was suggested, and my first thought was, sounds a bit woo-woo, not really what the point is. But oh my goodness, it is transformative. It really does make a difference. But yeah, if that's putting people off, talk us through what meditation is.
Yeah. Well, meditation is obviously, it can mean a variety of different things to different people. It very much depends what tradition you come from and how you define it. And that sort of sitting still and clearing your mind is actually from a monastic tradition. You know, it comes from the East, from places like Tibet and Kashmir in India, where those monks were basically renouncing their lives, their passions, their joys, their tastes. And, you know, I'm not knocking that. It was for, you know, a monk's life, and but saying that, you know, putting that to teenagers, that's not really going to be very appealing when they've had, you know, all day, they've had been told what to do. They've got all these rules. The last thing they want to do is come to a class and sit there really still and be told they're not doing it correctly, or they can't get rid of their thoughts. And secondly, because also they're at an age where they're trying to discover who they are. They don't really know their place in the world. I mean, we can all be insecure as adults, but for teenagers, especially these days, I think it's so much harder. And at 14, their whole prefrontal cortex is actually being reconstructed, which is why they're maddening at times, you know, and then really wonderful and say something that you think, wow, gosh, why hadn't I thought of that, you know? And other times they've kind of lost all, you know, they have risk-taking behavior, or they're, you know, they can't sort of, they need co-regulation, or they're a bit mood swingy. And in all of that, you know, their self-esteem is terrible. And that's when they can bully or sort of, you know, be nasty or grumpy. And I think if they can, if you get to them early enough, and they can get in touch with those things, like in that sort of meditation where they basically allow all their feelings, so nothing's not welcome, so you welcome every part of yourself. I mean, my teenagers, they tend to, I say, you can sit, walk, you know, sway, lie down, they're all immediately on the floor building nests of like lavender pillows, blankets, cushions. But yeah, the thought is that, because self-kindness is so important, because if you're banishing that and thinking, I mustn't think that, I mustn't do that, then you're saying no to a part of yourself, and you're oppressing a part of yourself. And we all know that if we don't allow parts of ourselves, then that's really damaging for our mental health, and we're pushing it away. And then maybe you just want to drink or get into drugs, or, you know, block that part of you. Whereas if you bring it up and you let your thoughts flow freely, then you can have some self-inquiry and wonder why you're feeling like that, and wonder what you need. And, you know, my hope is that we give them tools, because it's a very instinctive, natural thing to do, but there's ways to, you know, tune into it. Sometimes it will just happen, it'll just hit you out of the blue. I remember cycling back from Brighton one day, and my younger sister just told me that she was pregnant for the second time, and I got off my bike, and I was just, suddenly the sun was really shining on the water, and I just had to sort of stop for about 2 minutes, and I lost all sense of time and space. And I'd been having quite a stressful week, but I felt so kind of, I don't know, filled with wonder and nourished and calm. And the more of that we can teach them to put into the day, not that they're going to have these whole moments of wonder, but like if they're going to school, and they're, you know, they've got some low-level anxiety going on, if we could encourage them to walk and look up at the trees, maybe put on a happy playlist of songs that they like, that connect to them, or if they've got getting the bus to school, just take a few minutes to get off your phone, to look out of the window, to let your mind drift. You know, there's a lot of benefits to meditation, but one of them is creativity, because, you know, how else do ideas come up? But you have to there is something definitely to be said for daydreaming, because which is a part of it. But there's also things they can do. There's little meditative practices that will creep into their day that they can do very easily if they're feeling stressed. Like the walk to school, they get outside at lunchtime if they've got the option of the canteen or lunch. If they're feeling nervous before an exam, they can quickly disappear to the loo, and they can do like the power pose, where they lift their arms up and they're straight and take 3 big breaths. Or they can do like Wonder Woman, is putting your hands on your hips, and that's been proven to sort of reduce your cortisol. That just even standing up straight, the things we do in guided meditation, like relaxing your shoulders. Breath is such an important one, and breathing, if they breathe in through their nose and then out really slowly, then it engages their parasympathetic nervous system and they go into that rest and digest. And so if they're doing that, because you obviously you're not going to lie down and meditate in front of your friends if you're feeling anxious at school, but there's lots of things, once you get into that way of life and attuned with what works for you. Or maybe there's also things like you can do self-embrace. These are just little practices that help. Like you basically, if you were feeling really unsteady and worried at school, you could put your right hand under your armpit and your left hand the other side, and you can squeeze your arm as much as you want. And that's actually very grounding. There's lots of grounding exercises they can do as well, like the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. If they're having an anxiety attack, like 5 colors, 4 shapes, 3 sounds, 2 textures, 1 feeling on the inside. But also a lot of it with that bespoke practice is just thinking, what do I need right now? Like you've had maybe in the morning, they wake up and they're thinking, oh my goodness, I'm so overwhelmed. I can't face my peers, or work's really hard, and I need to have more confidence. And there's quite a lovely practice my teacher told me about, which was you go in the shower and then you just pretend that you're, with each, I don't know, shower gel or shampoo, that's full of confidence or that's full of peace. And you repeat that word a few times in the day. And, it's kind of like a bit placebo, but you keep that word in your mind. And there's things like if they've come home from school and they've had a really, the sort of shouty day where they walk through the door and slam and you think, oh gosh, here we go. But if they actually throw themselves and make a real effort to just throw themselves on the bed and be with all their feelings and play some cathartic music, that's the best thing for them. Or, if they're another really lovely practice, I think, say they're going through exams or something, which is also a yoga pose, but it's very simple, but it's just putting your legs up against the wall. And you put your legs up against the wall and you play some music and you just be, and you let your thoughts, you just time it for 20 minutes. And that is such a nice practice before bed. And also just being aware, of their senses and what makes for them, what feels sacred to them, what feels relaxing to them. And that might be the old sofa. That might be, co-regulating with your dog and giving it a hug, or it might be that they love the smell of certain candles and want their fairy lights up. I'm in my daughter's bedroom because it's the best place for the signal, but she certainly has a lot of fairy lights going. You can't see them all, but and just that real self-inquiry. What do I need right now? Rather than their mum telling them, which gets harder and harder. So I think that really helps. And that's why I think this kind of meditation, I think it works well for mums as well with busy lives. It wouldn't be so suited to monks in Tibet, but I think it works really well for teens. And I found that after class, you're so rejuvenated after that rest, which is it's a deeper sleep than actual sleep, and your brainwaves slow down, which connects you to joy. And they just sort of look, so there's just a real look about them afterwards. It's so nice to see. It's not just relaxed, but it's ready to go back to the next action phase, because, we're busy all day, and we need that. We need that rest and relaxation, and that being with ourselves. At the very least, it's an hour off their phone, which probably doesn't happen very often.
No, true.
we try and encourage it or turn certain apps off. And I think they like that, and they need it actually, and they need someone to say they don't have them in here. I mean, they haven't tried to use them, but yeah, and I've had some nice feedbacks from mums and them, and I think it's really important that people know it's not just sitting like sitting in that lotus position and chanting, although chanting's got its own place.
Yeah, I mean, so if parents are listening and thinking, well, that sounds like it might actually be really beneficial for my child, but there is no way I'm going to get them to go to a class with other people and voluntarily spend time because, new people and scary and all of the things that teenagers will put up the barriers for. I know certainly when I was getting into meditation, I just found a guided meditation in an app.
Yeah.
And I just listened to that to the point where I've probably memorized it by now.
Yeah.
But, just ways of getting into it. So some ways of introducing it to teenagers would probably be really useful. For ideas.
Yeah, well, that's how I sort of got them. I started this, and I need to, I've started on a website, but I need to get going with that and give direction with that, but of where to go. But I'm actually the first, I'm the first innate meditation teacher here, because the others are in Australia, but it comes from a tradition of instinctive meditation. And so but there's lots of instinctive meditations teachers over here, because the founder Lauren Roche, he taught loads of people in England and America and all over the place, but they can the way I get them in is I've got a little Instagram account, and I put little sort of self-care practices on there and things about connecting to joy and their senses and things that are important to them, and things are also important about, especially being teenage girls and boys growing up, but being kind to their bodies, because that's another thing that's really tough one. And so I sort of pull them in a little bit like that. And then I go on local Facebook parent groups, because teenagers aren't actually ever going to sit down and go, you know what I need right now? Some real help for my mental health. I'm going to Google it. I'm going to find a class. I actually did have one girl that found a class, but I think they're going to, so it's sort of getting to the parents and trying to explain to them that they're not going to be made to sit there still. And I do like a free first session. Normally so that when they come along, they are a bit nervous when they first arrive, and then they see that I'm not some scary dragon that's going to make them sit still. And it's the lessons are quite joyful too, and and they should be. And but it's I think that's the way, is going through the parents and showing them. And on the website at Tree of Life in Hove, where I work, it says all about how it's this form of meditation. It says a lot more about it, and giving tools teens for life. And it is hard to get the word out there, but there's also, like, my teacher Alison Potts, she's got some really beautiful guided meditations on SoundCloud and on Insight Timer. I don't know if you know that app. It's the biggest free meditation app where you could try out any kind of meditation is on there. But Alison's got some really lovely ones for kind of any feeling you might have, really, like whether you're wanting to have more confidence, or you're feeling sensitive, or you're needing more sleep. I mean, my younger daughter, she listens to her sleep meditations loads, and they really help, especially if she's all itchy at night. But you can look on Insight Timer and look at different types of meditation. But I would say that if anything, I mean, some people like rules. I'm not such a fan, but if it doesn't feel right to you, or it feels like an effort, it's not your kind of meditation. But there's like loads of kinds of different meditation on there.
I think the one that I use uses the phrase, you're going to have thoughts as you come along. That's okay. Just notice the thoughts, and then just drift away again. And it, as you said, it doesn't make you feel like you're failing at meditation because you've thought about something when your mind is supposed to be blank, because it's not how it works.
And sometimes afterwards you might think, what was that thing I was thinking about? I know what to do. You'll have this kind of clarity afterwards if you're allowing that to happen, and not blocking, and welcoming your whole self, basically the whole mess and wonderfulness, and seeing, you know, what's going to make your life, well, live your life to the absolute full.
Yeah, and I like the idea of just encouraging kids to make that time for themselves, for that brain space, to just not be doing, because I think we all spend too much time doing. Like, I'm at the point where I'll be watching TV and I'll be playing something on my phone and checking emails, and I
then you see them watching you and you're like, oh.
I can't just sit and be, unless I'm reading a book. Reading a book, I will get absolutely lost in. Music, to some extent as well. We're renovating at the moment. I know I talk about this a lot, but I've done most of the painting upstairs, and so I was just in a room with my headphones on, with a playlist that I had chosen and kind of curated, just therapeutically rolling the walls, and it was lovely. It was the first time I think I've shut my brain off properly for hours. And
we're on. We need that rest to go on to the next action stage. We need to feel rejuvenated. You know, people that just think, "I'll relax on holiday." Well, that's where you're going to run into a lot worse problems, aren't you? And it's so good for mental health. I mean, I think there's something like 12% reduction in relapse for depression. There's, I think, it's 60% of people noticed a real decrease in anxiety after doing meditation for 6 to 9 months. I mean, I think 74% do it for well-being, which just shows you how good it is. And it slows down your heart rate. I think your blood pressure drops by about 80%. And it's a deeper rest and sleep, which I know you should have sleep and meditation, ideally. But if you haven't got sleep, go and meditate for 20 minutes in your lunch break, and, you know, you'll come out feeling a whole lot better. And more rested.
It really does make that much difference. And it's funny because you say meditation to people and they think it's just this kind of woo-woo thing. But all of the science now is starting to really, really show the benefits that it has on your physical health as well as your mental health, on everything.
They use, you know, with neuroplasticity, they're like, you know, it's creating new neural pathways in your brain, isn't it? You know, done over time. So then you find it easier to notice the joy and the, you know, you feel more grateful for things because you're actually looking out for things to be delighted about, because life has so much to offer. And it's not saying you can't be sad or you can't be unhappy. You know, it's important to have tools for that. But the whole time you're kind of rewiring your brain, which is amazing.
Yeah, and it's interesting how all the threads are tying together of all the people I've spoken to this week. We talked to someone about journaling and very much about the science of gratitude and the science of happiness.
It's so important. Yeah, I do class that as well. That's doing putting those 3 things to be grateful for a day. It can be really helpful. I mean, some people it doesn't work with, but some people it really just makes them look out for them. Yeah. You know, if they're having the worst possible day at school and they can only manage, I had a penguin bar at break, you know, then, well, you know, keep digging, but it makes them think, what else is there? You know, and then you can, you know, be more, and telling people you're grateful for them and feeling, gratitude is really important, because actually things could be so much worse. And especially in a pandemic, you think, well, hang on, I've got a roof over my head, I've got a family, I've got a sibling to talk to and a dog, and, you know, and this isn't going to last forever, you know, just, yeah.
We've had well, thank you very much. Well, that's, I mean, so much to think about. And if people are interested in finding out more, so if people, for example, wanted to encourage their child to take a look at, or if they wanted to look themselves at your Instagram page or the website that you use.
Can I put it in the show notes? Does it?
You can put it in the show notes. Yes, you can.
Or do you get afterwards? No one has to watch me painfully type.
If you tell them what it is now, then we can put it in the show notes later, but it means anyone listening live.
Oh, right, yeah. So Alison Potts Innate Being. I can't remember the exact URL, but if you put that into Google, it will come up with her. Then if you Google instinctive meditation, and Lauren Roche, he was her teacher, and she does innate meditation, which comes from instinctive meditation. And then, if you listen to Alison's SoundCloud, those meditations I was talking about that have loads, loads of help on there. And then Insight Timer is the big meditation app that's free, so they can have a play around there, their teens. You know, there's so many for sleep and anxiety and all the things they deal with, and you know, it just gives them that space and that time to kind of get to know themselves and what they're all about. And that's so important, because if you're clearing your mind, you know, how are you going to decide what GCSEs you want to do, or A levels, or who you are, or where you're going to uni, or, you know, they need to be thinking, and they need that. I mean, they need to allow thoughts, and they need that time to switch off from just all the pressures of school and the phone, and take those little Pomodoro breaks, and, you know, use the left and right side of the brain.
Indeed. Yeah. So just your Instagram, so people can.
Yeah, it's at Wildflower Meditations.
Fantastic, because they sound like really useful little nudges. So
we'll try and give little tips and post stories on the stories of things that will help empower them, and sort of connect them to joy and hope and life and cheery things, and how to sort of cheer them up, and how to, I don't know, different ways to look at stuff. So I hope, I hope they'll enjoy that.
Well, thank you so much. I think there's a lot for parents to go away and think about, that kind of the concept of, you know, meditation as we stereotypically see it, and how that doesn't have to be what their kids actually experience, and the difference that it can make if they go and try stuff out. So a huge thank you.
Oh, no, pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
Been a delight. So this has been the 5th and final in our series of podcasts for Children's Mental Health Week. Do make sure you check out the previous ones, which you can find on our Facebook page. You can go back and watch the replays, or hopefully by this point, they will be live on the podcast, and you can have a listen to them at your leisure as well. But thanks ever so much for listening. It's been a lovely week, and hopefully you've gone away with some new strategies, some things that you can try to help support your child and their mental well-being.